What's up, my friends, and welcome into another edition of the Running Back Podcast. Welcome back, Frank Klose. Probably not as exciting of a location today as you were in yesterday, although I'm sure it is nice to be home, or as you were last week. But welcome into another edition of the Running Back Podcast. That is Frank Klose. I'm Tyler Zulli, and Frank is back with us for the in-between time, in between your trips to Clearwater. So first, how was your professional trip before you get to enjoy your personal trip?
Very, very nice. I will say the one big takeaway I got, and this is something we'll talk about in future episodes, I'm sure. The big takeaway from spring training is nobody seems to expect that there be baseball at the normal time next spring. Everybody seems to be expecting a lockout, but that was the buzz from the staff side, from the player side. But hope sprung eternal for everybody. It was like a down the road problem for a lot of them, but I think a lot of them took that as an opportunity to enjoy this year a little bit more.
And I think the next year, the looming dark cloud that we're all kind of anticipating, I don't know if that means part of a season, half a season, full season. I think we're all kind of in that we're expecting something next year. But I do think it plays a part into contracts and why I wonder if a lot of guys are getting big time AAVs this year. Before we dive into the reason as to why we're talking about contracts today, I was thinking about this afternoon. I'm curious your thoughts. When it comes to that impending end of the CBA, potential lockout, potential, time that is missed, I was thinking about this. I wonder if a cap does get implemented. Would contracts signed prior to that cap almost get grandfathered in and not count towards the cap number? And that is partially why some of these guys are signing, Bo Bichette getting 40 some odd $1 million a year. The Phillies making sure, as we'll talk about in just a second, they lock up Jesus Luzardo. Do you get a sense that maybe that might play into it where there's like a grandfather in of the old contracts?
No, I think that's one of the unanswered questions. I don't think that the teams know that answer yet. I don't think that the players' agents know that answer yet, and certainly not the players. So, to your point, the Bo Bichette, one of the reasons why maybe he took that lump sum 1 year deal from the Mets could be okay, I'm going to get this chunk of money now, knowing that I'm not going to have money next year. And you see built into a lot of these free agent deals a signing bonus where some of it is paid out next year
Sure.
so that there's money in their pocket if there is a work stoppage. So I think that's an unresolved question, which is why we are seeing some of the deals structured the way that they are being structured this offseason. And again, it's a roll of the dice for Bichette. It could be that, hey, 42 million right now is a lot of money. Maybe after this work stoppage, if there is one, or after a new CBA, maybe he wouldn't be able to make as much money because
Sure.
maybe a salary cap kind of pulls the ceiling down a little bit. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. And maybe that's why people were willing to take those shorter term deals or, again, throw some of that signing bonus money next year.
So I'm sure we'll continue to discuss it as the summer goes on, as we get closer and closer to December when the league year ends and we get the end of the CBA. But the contract at hand that we do want to talk about today is a contract extension for Jesus Luzardo. And it was something you and I discussed a little bit last week and kind of talking about how this is something that we're hoping gets done quickly so he doesn't end up hitting the open market as a free agent, whether or not that means salary caps involved. But $27 million a year, 5 years, $135 million will kick in next season. He'll make his $11 million arbitration this year, and then the $27 million per year range will kick in beginning next season. So big picture, obviously, the Phillies have decided, as they have for the last couple of years, that they are going to heavily invest in the starting rotation. Smaller picture for Jesus Luzardo specifically, I think a well-deserved contract. I think this is a good move for the Phillies, a good move for Jesus Luzardo. And I do believe, $27 million a season, if he were to get to free agency, assuming things don't get held up by a salary cap, you're seeing what some starters got this offseason. Brent Valdez got a ton, per year. Ranger Suarez got more money than what Jesus Luzardo did. I think that this obviously a good extension for Luzardo to stay put for 5 years, but not a bad move by the Phillies. I think 27 a year is less than I expected him to make.
Yeah, pretty much the market was set by his fellow rotation mate from 2025, Ranger Suarez,
Yeah.
who got 5 years, $130 million. So one of the things I was almost going to say last week was, oh, yeah, just give him maybe I even said it. I got to go back and listen how I responded. But, my thought has always been give him the Ranger Suarez deal and see if that gets it done. And it took $5 extra million to do so. But, that was a pretty comparable contract, I think. Now, the nice thing is, Jesus Luzardo's 2 years younger right now than Ranger Suarez. Of course, he's got to play out this year before his deal kicks in. So the Phillies had the benefit of him making $11 million this year and then having 5 more years after this. I know there was some talk about, well, why not just keep Ranger? I think there's a lot of reasons we can say that this might be the better contract at this time, given the point in their careers, and given the fact that they could have that expensive year with Luzardo in 2026. But I think that this is a really good move. I think when you look into the Phillies' future with their starting rotation, Zach Wheeler only signed through next year, although he has recently expressed kind of differently than before that maybe he'll be open to playing after that. At one point, he had talked about retiring, but then you have him locked up. You have Christopher Sanchez locked up. Aaron Nola is locked up. 6 years of Andrew Painter in his rookie contract. I mean, you're starting to really feel good about having a solid base at the starting rotation, which has really been, quite frankly, their strong suit over. There was a stat online from Paul Hembo, I believe it was, who basically showed just how since 2001, which is when Caleb Cotham became pitching coach, how dramatically they have led the league in starters WAR since that year. So, I think they realize it's won them a lot of games. One phrase I used to use a lot last year was that even heading into last year is like, okay, well, this starting rotation, they're going to win 90 games by accident, right?
Yep.
So you have that strong rotation in place. Then your bullpen is that much better because you're not coming in with 3 2/3 innings from the starter and then having to fill out longer games and then having to stretch the relievers longer. There's so much about having a strong rotation, which just makes all the difference in this game. So kudos to them for having a solid base. Now, yeah, there'll be injuries. Some guys will have down seasons, but then you can fill them in with the prospects you're developing along the way. And there's really, besides Gene Cabrera, Moises Chaussee, not a whole lot of starting pitching depth in the near future coming up through the system. So I think this was a really smart move. And even as some of the aging bats start to decline a little bit, like you saw actually at the 2008-2009 team, they brought in those 4 aces to sort of counteract some of the decline from their really good bats. I think this will help boost that as well. So I'm a big fan of them making this step right now, and just going into the season, how much different it feels just to know that they're kind of set. That's one fewer question mark among a season that's going to have plenty of question marks for the future.
And one thing I do want to apologize and say he was making less than Ranger Suarez, slightly more, as you pointed out, about $5 million more, which comes out to basically
$1 million a year. Yeah,
$1 million a season really doesn't hurt all that much. But you bring up the starting pitching numbers and the depth, and I was thinking about it. Obviously, they have invested quite a bit of money and a lot of bit of time. And as you brought up, the WAR from the starting rotation is far and away up in the upper echelons of the league. And I think a lot of that is due in part to the fact that, especially since 2024, this rotation hasn't really missed a ton of starts, right? Obviously, Ranger missed a little bit of time in the beginning of last year. Zach Wheeler missed time at the end of last year. Aaron Nola, for the first time in his career, missed a chunk of time, but he had been Mr. 30-plus starts every single season. Luzardo made all 32 starts. I believe Ranger made 26 or 27 last season. But for the most part, Wheeler's been ultra healthy and consistent until a freak, unfortunate incident with a blood clot. Aaron Nola never misses starts. I know he wasn't very good last year, but prior to that, never misses starts. Ranger had found a little bit of a role last season after starting the year on the IL. Really didn't miss any time after that. And I think, for the Phillies' sake, they've, especially after 2022 and I guess a little bit into 2023, where you were questioning, and obviously, of course, Christopher Sanchez the last 2 seasons has been as good as he's been. But since 2022 and 2023, where you had to bring in Noah Syndergaard, you were relying on Kyle Gibson, you were getting starts from Bailey Falter in the postseason. The Phillies said, no, not anymore. This isn't happening again. We've brought in Zach Wheeler. We've locked up Aaron Nola. We've gotten, I don't want to call it lucky because player development and a player's personal growth is not lucky. It's skill and hard work. But they've gotten way more than they could have ever expected from Christopher Sanchez. They were able to get Jesus Luzardo in a deal that I thought was a really good move for them at the time, even though Starlin Cabo was a highly touted prospect, really, really excellent defender. Does he hit at the major league level throughout his career? I don't know. Obviously yet to be determined. And I wasn't a huge Amarian Boyd fan, other than I thought he was a really good defender and a good athlete. But they've made it a point to say our starting pitching is going to be our strength, and availability outside of Aaron Nola for the first time really ever missing time and Zach Wheeler having a blood clot has been excellent for the last 2 seasons. And I would expect, especially when Zach Wheeler does return, whether that's late April, early May, into the summer months, that you're going to probably see that again.
Yeah, and give kudos to Caleb Cotham for his preparation and to the training team. I mean, they have kept them in tip-top shape. And so I think there's something to be said for the great work that they're doing in terms of preparation and keeping players healthy, because yes, that has been remarkable. And look, you're going to have some injuries. It's just going to happen. There'll be nagging little things. And by the way, I think that's one of the reasons why they made the tough call on Ranger Suarez is, he's been banged up a little bit each year, some issues with his back, never pitched more than 160 innings. Got 183 out of Luzardo last year, although he was injured the year before. He had, I think 182 the year before that. So I think that really the number of innings that you're getting out of this rotation really, really, really matters. I just alluded to it, but when you have a poor rotation, I mean, thinking back to the Falter days and the Syndergaard days that you mentioned, like you're going to the bullpen earlier and earlier, and then you burn guys out, and then you have to start optioning some out just to get a quote unquote fresh arm in there because you've taken too much out of them. And so, I mean, it really has dramatic effects on the bullpen and actually that starting rotation. Imagine if they did not have that last year. They started the year Jordan Romano as the closer and Jose Alvarado as closer B, kind of picking spots between the two. Romano doesn't show up and then Alvarado gets suspended. I mean, what would that bullpen have been like if the starting rotation did not give that amount of innings until they sort of fixed it a little bit? But
you think about the Mets starters last year. The Mets faltered in part because of the fact that their guys that they were relying upon either didn't get the job done or just weren't healthy, right? I mean, Minaya was not quite the same. They let Quintana walk. They had significant drop off from Kodai Senga. Luckily, Nolan McLean stabilized them a little bit. Jonah Tong, I think, is going to give them really good innings this year. But they lost Griffin Canning to a pretty significant injury middle of the season. And other than David Peterson, they weren't getting any length out of their starters. And it really, you could see it took a toll on their bullpen. Even the guys that they acquired down the stretch, Helsley and Rogers, were pitching a ton. Helsley didn't pitch very well. Rogers pitched well, but obviously was pitching 4 or 5 times a week. And the guys that were already in their bullpen really got taxed. And, I think that is a huge reason as to why the Mets were faltering down the stretches. They just weren't getting any length out of their starters whatsoever.
Yeah, and that could be the story of this year. No, they did add some extra depth. They traded for Freddie Peralta this year, and Nolan McLean is going to be an ace. I think that's kind of well accepted that he's going to be an ace in this league. So, I think this is going to be what sets the Phillies apart. And I know with the whole run it back idea and the thought that that the other teams got better than the Phillies got worse. It's because of this rotation and because, again, let's face it this way. So Walker Buehler, Phillies were interested in bringing him back, so they had more depth even in the rotation. A lot of players like him. They didn't want to come to the Phillies because he said, you know what, with the group that they have, I'm not going to pitch a whole lot.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of a compliment that Buehler gave the Phillies there in choosing San Diego instead of coming back to the Phillies. And still what's going to be the difference in the NL East. I mean, the Atlanta Braves injuries to their rotation. I just think that this is going to be the story of why the Phillies remain relevant, even if the lineup isn't perfect, even if there is some fall off from the performance last year or some of the vets as they get older. So this is a big deal because this cements what everybody is struggling with in baseball, and that is having people pitch every fifth day.
Well, and you think about the numbers of the guys that are in the rotation for 2027 specifically. Obviously, you bring up Zach Wheeler, will be the final year of his deal. Does he return? Does he not? Regardless if he returns or not, I would imagine Zach Wheeler will not get another $42 million AAV. So it might be a 2 year pretty high amount, but I don't think he'll get 40 plus a season. But in 2027, Wheeler is going to make 42, Luzardo 27, Aaron Nola 24 and a half, Christopher Sanchez, at least on paper, now he has incentives and things like that, $6.5 million, which I feel terrible for him. You got to you got to figure that contract out. But those four guys, and you bring up Painter, who's team control for quite some time, $100 million for 2027. So I went and I looked around the league just trying to get a kind of an understanding of where teams are paying their starting rotation. The Dodgers are hard to calculate, A, because of deferred money, B, because obviously Shohei Ohtani is a two-way player, so whatever money he makes is because he's the probably the most talented player in the world. But the two teams that I came up with were looking at 2026. The Detroit Tigers are paying $95 million for Tarek Skubal, Framber Valdez, Jack Flaherty, and Justin Verlander. Now, Skubal, I think I don't know how you feel, but I think he's the best pitcher in baseball, two-time Cy Young winner.
Agreed.
He's making 30 some odd $1 million in arbitration. He's going to get maybe the biggest contract ever if it weren't for a lockout. And then obviously bringing in Framber on a short-term high AAV deal was something that they wanted to do to bolster their rotation. Flaherty is what he is. Justin Verlander is nice to see him come home, and he's making $10 million. It's not a ton, but they're at $95 million for next season. 2027, the Yankees, $90 million for Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, and Max Fried. Max Fried, has the chance to be a 20-game winner every year he takes the mound. Carlos Rodon has bounced back nicely since that bad first year. Cole's been often injured over the last two seasons, but at one point, widely considered the best pitcher in baseball. I think that the reality is, assuming health, which you can't always do, paying for pitching a lot of times leads to wins.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was thinking back to the old Phillies philosophy was, oh, you can't give more than 3 years to any pitcher. And then they finally did it for the first time with Cliff Lee, because at the end of the day, you need to get the player. But yeah, I mean, it is risky. There will be injuries. I think that's just a fact of life. But if you don't put money into that rotation, you don't win. I mean, the Detroit Tigers, I don't know what Verlander is going to give them next year, but even just with Valdez behind the best pitcher in baseball as the number two,
sure.
Again, that's another team that's going to win 90 games by accident. Even though they might have some shortcomings on their roster, but they do have a lot of young talent. Like, you feel like that's going to anchor them, and it makes all the difference. And that's why the Yankees will always be a contender, because they will spend the money on the rotation no matter what. And of course, Garrett Cole, one of the best pitchers in the game, is kind of as their ace. And I mean, even in Rodon, I mean, did he live up to the money? Maybe not, but at the end of the day, this is an experienced, solid starter, and they're not going to the bullpen, and there's that consistency. It makes all the difference.
And then of course you have to supplement with either young talent or guys on good contracts, right? Because I look at the Phillies. Christopher Sanchez is the easy example, right? That contract is crazy team friendly. Finished second in the Cy Young. While not the same pedigree, Casey Mize is a former number one overall pick. He's making like $6 million, right? Not the same pedigree as Christopher Sanchez, but rounds out your rotation for relatively cheap. Cam Schlittler for the Yankees was really good last year down the stretch, on a team-controlled contract still. As much as you have to spend your money, then you solidify the back end of the rotation with guys who can be in the back end and slide up, right? And that's what the Phillies this year are going to hope for with Andrew Painter.
Yeah, I will say this: I got to see him pitch once so far, and I do think he's not going to be the rookie sensation, perhaps, but I mean, he certainly can hold his own.
If he gives you 25 starts at a 4 ERA, You cool with that?
I think so. Well,
I think
actually,
I
I
am too. For as a 5.
I just want to know. I just want to know what his innings limit is and how they're going to manage it. I don't want to see a Steven Strasburg
Sure.
situation where oh, we're in the playoffs finally. Oh, sorry, you're sitting. That's.
Sure.
But you know what? With the depth they have, they might not need to worry about that even so much. So I just hope that they manage his innings well. There'll probably be a lot of 4 and 5 inning starts if they can early. Like if Phillies have a decent lead, they might go to the long reliever or something. But yeah, my only question is, are they going to let him? How about this? Will they let him start every fifth day if
Sure.
for the whole season? I mean, 25 starts. Does that mean that he's on the IL for a while, or does it mean that he's shut down early? So,
Yeah, and that's
um,
a great question, especially once Zach Wheeler comes back. Are you good? Do you go to a 6-man for 2 or 3 times through to give him that extra day of rest because you have Taiwan Walker available? Do you piggyback him and Walker together? There's options, and I think they're going to set a limit, but I do think that they have to reevaluate and reanalyze as the year goes on. If he's pitching extremely well, I'm not saying to jump it to another 40 innings, but you do want to be able to say, hey, this kid's pitching really well. We want him in some capacity in the postseason. If he's pitching poorly, sure. Maybe you do, you go to the 6-man and you kind of let him get to that innings limit, shut him down, send him back to AAA, whatever the answer might be. But I really do think this has to be fluid. It can't be, as you bring up Strasburg, can't be just a hard stop number and that's it.
yeah, I will never understand that for the rest of my baseball life. I think, but ultimately though, he did get healthy enough to win that 2020 World Series. So the story of Strasburg at least got that.
We could talk about this rotation, and we will for the entirety of the season. I could do it for hours, but we've got quite a bit to get into still. Let's shift gears for just a moment. Stay with the Phillies, and then we'll talk about World Baseball Classic at the end because tonight's a big night for Team USA, and it shouldn't be, but we'll talk more about that. Jason Stark wrote an article the other day, and basically kind of laid out going through teams that historically have spent a lot of money and have had a veteran laden core, and kind of going through and looking at how many of those teams have kept the same group together for as long as the Phillies are attempting to keep their same group together. And I read the headline before I read the blurb, before I read the whole article. And as soon as that blurb came out, I went, it can't be many. And in fact, it comes out that it's basically none. That the Phillies are kind of in uncharted territories. And by the way, the caveat was to keep the core together and win a championship. And I think that that's kind of where the Phillies have found themselves at this point. Is obviously it's been championship or bust for the last few seasons. 2022 was fun. Expectations started in 2023. Now you're heading into year 4, really year 5 with the core, but year 4 of expectations. It's kind of uncharted territory where the Phillies find themselves in, not having won a championship.
It really, really is. And I guess the question is are the 2 subtractions from the roster enough to make a difference? I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, I know a lot of people out there have called Nick Castellanos an addition by subtraction situation. I mean, I don't know that Strom was that level, although people didn't necessarily love him as a teammate. That's something I've gathered, from the Phillies clubhouse. But really, it's really about the offense, right? The lineup and the function of the lineup. That seems to be where we're talking about here, right? So, yeah, think about since 2022, they added Trey Turner in 2023 to the mix. But look around that diamond. I mean, how many of them are still there, right?
Sure.
I mean, Brandon Marsh. If you look at the outfield, yeah, Brandon Marsh is sort of the veteran outfielder now on this roster, but then go around the infield and like Bryce Harper, of course, was there. Bryson Stott was there. And then third base, Alec Bohm was there. Catcher, JT Realmuto was there. So that is a lot of positions where you're all trying to function as a lineup and where they all, quite frankly, have had the same kind of hole. That's my thing. I mean, I think this is a matter of this trade deadline, can they find that right piece to be that right-handed bat hitting fourth? I mean, it's just, you know, let me take a step back too. Do you want to change things just for the sake of changing things? Like, I mean, I'm sure some of this is contract related. I mean, Alec Boehm, I know he's been sort of talked about as someone that they could trade either this past off season or the one before that. But quite frankly, they're under no obligation to do so, and he still does a lot of things really well. Still a high contact bat. So do you have to just get rid of him for the sake of changing it up, or um, some of
So,
those?
to answer your question, do I want to change just to change? No, I don't think that's a necessity, but I do think a change in the sake of approach, in the sake of continuity, is the word you used, in the sake of filling that four-hole spot that has been desperately needed to be filled, as obviously Nick Castellanos became apparent that wasn't him anymore. And that again is why we keep coming back to, for this particular group, this 2026 team, and forget everything else for a moment and the shortcomings over the last couple of years. The easiest way for this thing to continue to progress, or to progress in 2026, is for Adolis Garcia to hit 25 plus home runs. That to me, like, is just 1-to-1. Put him in the four hole. You can move Bohm to 5. It allows Marsh to hit 6. JT hits 7. Stott hits 8. Crawford hits 9. That's the easiest solution to all of this. It's not as simple as that in terms of, does it happen and can he do it? But I think, like, in terms of infusion of pop, that's the easiest way to go about that particular, this whole particular situation.
Yeah, will it work? I mean, this is a roll of the dice. I mean, this is their annual $10 million outfield gamble, right? Last year was the Kepler gamble, but that didn't work. So yeah, I mean, I think that's it's amazing to put that much pressure on one guy that you signed for a 1-year deal.
Sure, it's unfair, but
yeah,
kind of where we are.
And hopefully he will have that. I mean, he's very, very happy to be with his good buddy Edmundo Sosa. So I think he's found a home already. So we'll just see if he's able to find that home in that lineup the way that the Phillies want.
So I think really what the crux of the article was getting at was, while they have invested a lot of money and a lot of time and re-upped some of these guys, Schwarber gets the deal. Obviously, Luzardo is here. Nola signed long-term. Turner and Harper not going anywhere. JT obviously signs a 3-year deal this offseason. While the core isn't necessarily going anywhere, I think all of the fringe outlier pieces would start to be considered if it doesn't do what they're hoping it does next offseason. I think that would be, I don't want to say like the tear it down moment, because a lot of these contracts are either not movable in terms of no trade or not movable in terms of years and money. The fringe pieces would then start to get traded off and moved on from, I think, if it doesn't work this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's some players coming along that could play some outfield positions. So, I mean, do you try to make a deal with a Brandon Marsh? Obviously, Alec Boehm is a free agent this year. After this year, do you just let him walk? There's some places they could, Bryson Stott would be a free agent after next year. So there are some positions that they could try to be creative and try to change. Now, look, I think, by the way, I think the Mets, they needed change. They needed to dramatically change the atmosphere of that team. And they really did. Traded Brandon Nimmo. They and certainly didn't sign Pete Alonso back, even though it seemed like they might. I mean, those are two big names from that lineup year to year to year to year that just didn't get it done. Did the Phillies not get it done in the same way that the Mets didn't get it done? No, the Phillies far outperformed them. I mean, we were talking talking a team that won 96 games last year. I mean, this is not like one of those teams that's failing to make the playoffs or scuffling to get to 88 and be a quick exit wild card, right? I mean, this is a team that won 96 games, and that there's a reason they won 96 games, and so they're just trying to find that one missing piece or one edge of some sort that gets them over the top. And I still have a hard time getting past the Phillies exit last year, recognizing that they outscored the Dodgers in the NLDS. Like, I mean, that was closer than it seemed, right?
Well, the pitching was excellent. I mean,
Yeah,
Christopher Sanchez was great. Jesus Luzardo, I really thought gave a huge like dog type performance, especially coming out of the pen in Game 4. I mean, even Aaron Nola and the Aaron Nola Rangers Suarez piggyback worked. The pitching was excellent. The issue becomes outside of Game 3 where they really ambushed. It was really Clayton Kershaw more than anything else. And they did do a good. I thought they had a really good approach against Yoshinobu Yamamoto, which they didn't really have a good approach against the other 3 starters. But against Ohtani, they struggled. Against Snell, they struggled. Against Glasnow, they struggled, and especially the
it's
top
the left,
3.
especially the 2 lefties, right?
Right.
That was really their
You know,
weakness. Again, does Adolis Garcia solve that?
it's a tough ask, but I think so. 2 things I believe can be true at once. Do I think they win 95 or 96 games again this year? I do not. Do I think they win somewhere in the 88 to 92 range? I do. And I think that they are a playoff team once again. They're too talented not to be. What happens come postseason time? Well, that's for them to decide. And I would tell you, history tells me I don't feel great about it. But are they a postseason team in my eyes right this moment? Yeah, I think so.
And there's always July. I mean, there's always something
Sure.
that moves the needle a little bit. So I think when it's all said and done, the dust clears. They're still 92, 93, and they win the East. I mean, that's my opinion.
So, regardless if you think they're a wild card team or a division winner, I think most people will tell you they think they're a playoff contending team. Where they go from there is kind of up to them. Last thing today, World Baseball Classic tonight. The future of the United States hangs in the balance, and they don't control anything. After losing to Italy last night, it's up to the game between Italy and Mexico to determine if the U.S. will advance or not. So here is the scenarios. If Italy wins, that's the easiest scenario. If Italy wins, the U.S. advances. If Mexico wins and scores more than 5 runs, the U.S. advances. If Mexico wins but scores 4 or fewer, Mexico and Italy will advance, and the U.S. will go home. We talked about it a couple weeks ago about how talented this Team USA was. I got to tell you, I know it's not the World Series, but it means something. And last night's blunder by Mark DeRosa is going to get remembered in World Baseball Classic lore for a very, very long time, because DeRosa basically admitted he thought that they were in. The team was out hanging out and celebrating, and were they drinking some beers or not? Somebody said there's some beers in the clubhouse or whatever. They're adults; they can have fun, and enjoy a beer or two. But it does seem like Team USA believed after winning their 3rd game that they were locked into advancing into the next round, and they are not. And after losing to Team Italy in yesterday's game, their fate no longer hangs in the balance. This is a blunder by Team USA, the coaching staff, and somebody should have noticed this at some point, that run differential and runs still matter.
Hey, you know who's pitching for Team Italy tonight? Aaron Nola.
And the lifeblood of Team USA hangs on Aaron Nola's shoulders.
Yeah, that's funny. The guy who has never visited Italy. So, so I think if let me say this. Last week, if you remember, I was thinking that Team República Dominicana would be the winners of all this, and I think it's just that extra edge, that extra grit that comes with this being your one chance to represent your country. Does it have the same weight in the U.S. as it does in these other places? I don't think so.
It's a great question, because you watch a lot of the other teams and they are on the edge of the rail of the dugout. Like this means something to them. And I don't want to say that Team USA took this lightly or didn't take this seriously, but that collection of talent is way too good to be worrying about advancement. If you told me they lost to Team Dominican Republic, if you told me they lost to Team Japan in the knockout stage, if you told me they lost to a couple of different teams with a lot of, major league talent and some really good, local talent, I would say, okay. If you're telling me that the fate of their advancement into the knockout stage hinges on not them, that's problematic, because the talent is way too good on this Team USA roster to not make it out of the knockout stage. And I do start to question, like, how serious did you guys take this?
Yeah, I just think that for a lot of these players, and look, I think these players, they've been coming to the U.S. playing baseball for millions and millions and millions of dollars, but they had to leave home to do it. This is the one shot, and I really really like the leadership of Albert Pujols, the Dominican team as
Sure.
well. He kind of set the groundwork early on, like, hey, this isn't about egos. We're here to win, and we're here to do this. And like, I think they've got an extra edge to them that I just can't see matched. I mean, you look up and down that Dominican lineup, it is just disgusting.
Oh, it's an elite lineup.
Like, when you have that level of talent and you have that extra edge, that extra grit, and Sandy Alcantara is pitching for you, I think that bodes pretty well for this game against Venezuela tonight. I think they're going to do just fine.
So just to check in, Team Canada at this very moment of recording, up 5-2 on Cuba. And then, of course, as we said, 7 o'clock, the one that the United States is looking for, Aaron Nola versus Javier Assad of the Chicago Cubs. So, obviously, this prediction will only last as long as this game gets started. But do you think that Team USA is going to advance tonight?
Here's my prediction. Aaron Nola will have a nice outing, maybe give up 2 runs. I think Team Italy will lose, but
Oh,
not
okay.
by a lot.
Now, I was going to say, did they lose like 4-2? Because if it's like 3-2, 4-1, then
Look! The one story of Italy has been Dante Nori. Phillies center field prospect, hit a couple of home runs. Actually, the last game he ended up going hitless, but he had a sac fly and a walk, and his average went down to 500 for this. So, I mean, I love him as a prospect. I love that this happened for him, but I think that Dante Nori is probably a candidate to regress a little bit.
Well, it's funny. I was actually texting a buddy. I love the World Baseball Classic in the sense that, they'll tell the backstory of some of these players. And I love how it ranges from elite level major league players, like guys that are going to go to the Hall of Fame when their careers are over, to this guy had to take PTO to get to the World Baseball Classic. But the one thing I do find funny is I was watching the Team Mexico game the other night, and there was a kid from the Angels farm system who was just throwing smoke, and I mean looked excellent doing it. And I was watching him pitch, and I texted a buddy and I said, I find it so funny that this guy can play for Team Mexico, which is one of the better teams, in the world, but isn't ready to make the Los Angeles Angels. And it's like, this guy probably should make the roster at this point for a bad major league team, because he's pitching so well for his nation. And I think it's just such an amazing experience. And I know, like, there's a lot of level of different feels across, especially American baseball fans, because as you mentioned, there is an opportunity to wear your country's name across your chest for, non-American players who play in the major leagues. But the stories range from, like, the guy who was pitching for the Czech Republic, who throws like 83, gives you 4 shutout innings or 4 2/3 shutout innings against Team Korea, one of the better teams in the World Baseball Classic, and he's like a Czech historical figure at this point. And I think the World Baseball Classic, much like the World Cup, is such a cool event to bring all these nations together, to see some of the talent, to hear some of the stories. I love this event. I can't get enough.
Yeah, I wish they found a better way to make it not be so anonymous in the U.S.
Well,
I
I
would
think the
rather
best
see
way to
them.
do it is to carve out 2 weeks in the middle of the season and do
Yeah,
it as the All-Star break.
exactly what I was going to say. Just have a middle pause in the middle and do it, and then it's everybody will already be mid baseball season and
Right.
that baseball mentality, and then that'd be or how about this? Can we get it back in the Olympics and just
That
make
too.
make it part of the Summer Olympics again and
I
shut
think
down for that?
if you can get, especially come July, and guys, as you said, guys are rolling. Could you imagine, a semifinal game, Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Tarek Skubal for a chance to go to the World Baseball Classic final, right? I mean, it just would be it would be amazing theater. And just if you're a baseball fan of any team, or just a baseball fan in general, that's the best baseball that you could ask for, is the chance to go represent your country in the championship game with, that was an example, but a pitching matchup of that caliber, I think would be so much fun.
Yeah, not to mention that right now their innings are limited, right? So I mean, Aaron
Right.
Nola's starts are 3 innings. I mean, if he throws 4 tonight, that's probably where he would be in a spring training game,
Sure.
and he's not there to like compete for a traditional start. So yeah, that's the one downside of doing it now. And then and I've said this before too. I know some people say, well, what about the injuries? And I don't care. I'm like you can't live scared, right? So play baseball. That's what they're here to do.
Well, my friend, we'll find out if the United States advances tonight. I'm sure we'll talk about it regardless next week on the next edition of the Run It Back podcast. But you are heading back down to Clearwater, so I hope you enjoy your time. This time you get to just relax and hang out and
Not
have some
bringing a
fun.
computer. Not
I
bringing
don't
any
blame you.
technology. I have my phone. In fact, I'm going to put an out of office on for my college job, and I plan to probably even log out from that email address, and I'll just deal with whatever problems on Monday.
That is future Frank's problem.
Yes.
But I hope you enjoy your time. As always, it was a blast to get to chat a little Phillies, a little World Baseball Classic with you. Enjoy your time, safe travels, and we'll do it again next week.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Tyler.
All right, that's Frank Klose. I'm Tyler Zulli saying thank you so much for being a member and a viewer of the Run It Back podcast. Check us out here, of course, on YouTube. You can listen on any audio streaming platforms as well. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a like, drop a subscription. We would really appreciate it. Hit that 5-star notification as well on all of the streaming platforms. Until next time, again, that's Frank Klose. I'm Tyler Zulli saying we will talk to you next week right here on the Run It Back podcast. See you.